Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name, your manically regressive host. Let's, there's something that just surfaced today I want to make you aware of. You know, we've been talking in this program today about President Obama's intentions to do an end run around Congress, to ignore Congress, to act in spite of Congress, to go around the Constitution, to go around the law, to act in defiance of the law. One story from Wyoming before I want to talk about minimum wage here and what President Obama is getting ready to do. But listen to this story from Wyoming and what the EPA, this is Barack Obama, the EPA, it's the Environmental Protection Agency, they operate under Obama's leadership. If Obama says don't do this thing or retract it, they don't do it or they retract it. So when this kind of thing happens by the EPA, it happens because they know that Barack Obama will sign off on this, that he's fine with this, that he supports this. And now that this news is out and Barack Obama has done nothing, then obviously that confirms that this is consistent with Barack Obama's view of the role of the EPA. The EPA, we talked at the beginning of the program about the fact that God is the one that designs boundaries. Boundaries are in God's economy. They are right and proper and appropriate, and it's appropriate for nations and states to be able to protect and defend those boundaries. And here's what the EPA has done. They just took 3 towns in Wyoming. These are towns that by an act of Congress in 1905 establishing the boundaries of the Indian reservation, this is a law, Congress passed it, and these 3 towns in Wyoming are in the state of Wyoming. That's where they are, and that's where they have been since 1905 by an act of Congress. The EPA just took these 3 towns in Wyoming and they stuck them on the Wind River Indian Reservation, which, by the way, is where Sacagawea is buried. But the EPA redrew the boundaries of the Wind River Indian Reservation in contravention of the law of Congress from 1905 and stuck these 3 Wyoming towns, Riverton and a couple of other smaller towns. Riverton's got about 10,000 people in it. Kinnear and Pavilion, they're smaller communities with population in the hundreds. But Riverton, before the EPA got involved, they were in Wyoming. Now they're on an Indian reservation. And this wasn't done by Congress. This wasn't even done by the president through executive order. This was done by an out-of-control bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. 3 towns in Wyoming, Newsmax.com, have been placed inside an American Indian reservation because the EPA ignored an act of Congress and unilaterally redrew a Native American reservation's boundary line. Now, of course, this is enormous for any number of reasons, but it shifts jurisdiction for policing, taxing, and other services to Indian tribes. So the question the people in Riverton have, okay, if there's a crime, who do we call for help? Who do we call for help? Before, we called our own local sheriff or police chief. We called Wyoming state authorities. Now do we have to call the reservation police? Who do we call? Now these, and once again, this is Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. Once again, the Obama administration thinks it can ignore the law of the land when it suits their agenda. Now, the Wind River Indian Reservation is home to these 2 tribes, the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone, and Sacagawea was a Shoshone, which is why she's buried on this reservation. It's home to Wyoming's 4 casinos, 3,532 square miles, which is bigger than Delaware. This is a reservation that's already bigger than the state of Delaware. They do not need Riverton and Kinnear and Pavilion. They got 3,532 square miles, 10,000 Native American inhabitants, 7th largest Indian reservation in the country. It was established in 1868, boundary set in 1905 by Congress, ignored by President Obama's EPA. More trouble for Chris Christie, by the way, thinking about 2016. His state, this is an George Mason University, they have on their campus the Mercatus Center. They did an analysis of the solvency of all 50 states, and they came to the conclusion that New Jersey is the least solvent state in the union. And Governor Chris Christie wants to become the president of the United States, and he is the governor of the least economically solvent state in the United States of America. And things have not gotten better under his watch. So if he's made president, he will turn the entire United States into New Jersey. The study finds that New Jersey is in the worst financial state, this is from Breitbart.com, in the worst financial state of any state in the union. It is the worst in budget. It is the worst in long-run solvency. It has the worst per capita budget deficit in the nation. Now, some of this Chris Christie inherited, but the point is none of it has gotten any better under Chris Christie's leadership. The tax burden on the average New Jersey family has increased on his watch, 18.6%. Nothing seems to have improved since Christie's time in office, despite the fact that he campaigned on economic recovery. Under his tenure, 25% of New Jersey's youth are moving back in with their parents. Rampant crime is overtaking urban centers like Newark and Camden. So another blow to Chris Christie's 2016 hopes. Things are so bad, by the way. Listen to this, how bad things are. The GOP elites, I said this before, they're trying to prop up Chris Christie. Newt Gingrich out there hacking and flacking for Chris Christie. You've got, or Karl Rove rather, not Newt. Karl Rove out there hacking and flacking for Chris Christie because he's their guy. So they're trying to defend him. They're trying to prop him up. They're trying to explain what he did. Things are so bad that the GOP establishment is actually thinking about running Mitt Romney in 2016. That's how bad things are. That's how averse the GOP establishment is to conservative candidates. They want to try to revive Mitt Romney. This is from Hot Air, a la pundit. In interviews with more than a dozen party officials, fundraisers, and strategists in New York and Washington over the past 10 days, Republicans described a palpable sense of anxiety gripping the GOP establishment in the wake of Christie's meltdown and an emerging consensus that the once promising cast of candidates they were counting on to save the GOP from the Tea Party and the nation from Hillary Clinton is looking less formidable by the week. There are definitely people jumping ship, the operative said. In fact, it's gotten so bad, the operative said, that some donors have started looking back fondly on the good old days of 2012. You know what a lot of them say to me? I think we need Mitt back. Well, on that cheery note, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Ryan in Arkansas. Ryan, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. I was just listening to Sandy Rios the other day, and there was a caller that called in from Searcy, Arkansas, talking about the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I guess they're kind of getting after the police chief there about a cross that was in the police department's yard somewhere there.
I think it was a county sheriff and some private citizen put a small cross right outside the office on the property of the sheriff's station.
Were you aware of Baxter County, which is Mountain Home, Arkansas? I guess the same foundation, though, had gotten after the county courthouse about an ATC scene that they had up there as well.
Yeah. Well, and again, this goes back to Constitution 101. It's impossible for this county sheriff, it's impossible for Baxter County to violate the First Amendment of the Constitution, because that's always what they're told. You're in violation of the Constitution. You're violating separation of church and state. You got to take that cross off of there. They cannot possibly violate the First Amendment of the Constitution because they are not Congress. First Amendment, the first word in the First Amendment is Congress shall make no law. There's no restriction on what a sheriff can do, no restriction on what a county can do, no restriction on what a chief of police can do. All right, listen, I appreciate the call, Ryan. Thank you for that. Let's go to Terry in Texas. Terry, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to ask you on the landowner thing earlier.
On the voting deal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I heard what you said. You don't actually advocate going back to that, but in this day and time and the way mortgages are set up, I bought a house in '93, been paying on it for 21 years, and it's not even half paid for. So do you think back then when they made that law, did they have mortgages back then, or did they own their property outright before they could vote?
Well, you got me on that one, Terry. I don't know if they had the concept of mortgages back then. Maybe they saved up enough money and just bought the land outright. But they had banks back then, so I'm guessing that there were ways, maybe through private parties or through banks to take out loans and mortgages. But once you take out the mortgage, it's your property. You can say the bank owns it, but
Yeah, the bank does own it.
Yeah, but it's
'cause they have the deed.
Yeah, but at least it's in your name, and you would be considered, I think, a property owner at that point. All right, Terry, listen, thanks for the call. Last call of the day. Let's go to Kevin in Mississippi. Kevin, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hi. I just was going to comment on the dereliction of duty of the office of the president presently, with the Benghazi scandal. But it would also be dereliction of duty of Congress, even though it's not Republican-controlled, or the Senate, rather, doesn't reprimand this behavior. And the other comment that I wanted to make, and I think it's real important to remember that the first president that I ever heard any speak of the New World Order was George Bush Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is not a new thing, and so I've always, and I don't adhere really to the so-called conspiracy theories quite so much, but conspiracy is when people act together, and certainly there have been people for quite a long time that are working to basically pull this nation down.
Yeah. Well, the conspiracy